Kick us off this morning, Michael.
Well, good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about forms and all things you can do with them. Again, that is just the topic, so feel free to, just the kind of hierarchy topic of what we're going to be talking about, reflecting back to if we don't have any questions from the audience. So at any point, feel free to ask any questions you have about pertaining to Bluebeam as a whole. What else do we got, Jason?
Yeah, just another edition of our morning coffee review. So we'll start talking about forms, and then we'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A panel and the chat panel, see what other questions come up, but we can dive right in otherwise.
And it looked like you had forms already set up.
Yeah, I'll share my screen today. Made you do it last time, I think. So here we go. So forms inside of Review. So let's back up a little bit. I'm going to open up another form. There's actually some forms pre-populated here inside of Review, but let's take a look at this. A form is a document, right? So normally where you'd have a space to put a line or a piece of text, that placeholder, a form is going to allow you a specific spot for it that's going to be pre-formatted to allow you to, put things the way you want and the text the way you want. And we already got our first question from RT.
So
is this in Review Extreme? Yes. Forms are an Extreme only function. However, I believe Standard can fill them in, but you need Extreme to create them. Is that correct?
One second.
Could be.
Because I thought you could still create forms. You just can't do the automatic forms. Automatic forms in the Extreme function, but let me look real quick because I don't want to.
Because it used to be only that the automatic forms was an Extreme only, but I found in my little homework for today's session, I saw that forms were Extreme only. So I'm thinking either there was a change somewhere, or
you saw that where? You don't recall?
On the internets. I was trying to figure out.
Because if you look from here, so if you do the comparison chart, if you go to the comparison chart, right, of what different editions there are, usually what I see and always reference to is the automatic creation of forms. They don't differentiate between, nope, scroll up.
Going too fast.
Up. That's all the way at the beginning, right here. So use automatic form creation is all I see. It doesn't say anything. And if you do a Control F to see forms.
Does that work in the Bluebeam web tab? It does not.
I am not in the Bluebeam web tab. I wanted to do the Control F. Edit. So yeah, it says create and edit forms.
Create and edit forms, even for scan documents, is only Extreme.
It's only Extreme, yeah.
But you should still be able to fill them in Standard.
Yes.
So if you're creating them, you will need Extreme.
So there's the clarity there.
There's the clarity. So there are forms available, but you can't edit them and you can't create them. So if you wanted to add radio boxes or text things or the text choice things, you're kind of limited there.
That's the creation. What you just brought up was and is from out of the box.
Correct. So what I have on my screen is a template. And we talked about templates a couple weeks ago. If you missed that one, check out our YouTube channel and go back a couple weeks. But if we go to File, New PDF from Template, you'll see that there's a couple out of the box. There's a fax, which is ironic because we're using Bluebeam. And then there's a fax form. And then there's an RFI and an RFI form, a submittal and a submittal form. And the only difference is if I go to RFI, here's what I'm talking about. It's got the lines for you to place text or descriptions or pictures or whatever. And here it's just blank. So if I needed to fill this in, I'm going to go use the typewriter tool or the text box tool, which means that my formatting is likely going to be different. My spacing might be weird. When I go to print this, it's not going to look very consistent.
And you can't send it to clients, right?
Well, you'd have to flatten it and all that other stuff. And
well, if you wanted them to fill it out, right?
Oh, yeah. Then it wouldn't be so nice. But with a form, if I go do the same exact file, new PDF template, RFI form. Now I have a new document, and all this is set up. So if I need to enter in RFI number 62220112021.
Do you see a disconnect with Adobe? No, Bluebeam Revu follows the ISO standard. So it's the International Standard Organization of Coding PDFs. So it still writes, well, it codes PDFs in a similar manner. So any type of ISO coded document, it will work.
Yeah, good question. Now I have seen some little bugs and stuff with certain forms between Adobe and Bluebeam, but that was a few versions ago. So I don't know if it's been resolved. Probably has been, because like Michael said, it's following a standard. And if they follow that standard, they actually have to mean it. So they should work pretty good together.
Or it wouldn't open up in review. So that's another point, right? You could tell right off the start that they're not using an ISO standard writer, because you wouldn't be able to open it up in here. And David says, but at least the lines don't disappear when you type into or get larger, like they do when someone sends you a form in Word format.
Exactly. This way you can control your output, right? So if you send it to anybody and they use the form, the text will be the right size. It's going to have the right justification. It's going to look cleaner overall, and it really makes it easy. Now, speaking of making it easy, since we're laying out forms and we're doing this in Revu Extreme, the big benefit of this is the automatic form creation. So I'll go back to this one. So here's our standard document. There are no forms on here. If I go to create these, I go to Tools, Form, and create my text box. Right, so I can go pick my little boxes here, and then I can copy this, and I can put these over here so they're the same height, and I can, edit these accordingly. But still, this is a manual process, and we don't want to do this. So one of the benefits of Revu is that, or Revu Extreme, is that it can automatically create form fields. And for this to work, I'm totally going to cheat, and I'm going to open up a special data set that's meant just for this exercise.
No way.
Yeah, totally. So same thing, still another RFI, which stands for, could be a question, anybody? RFI should be a pretty easy one. In this field, this group of misfits. All right.
No one posted. Oh, request for information. There we go.
Oh, hey, there we go, David. Good job. All right. So this time I'm going to use my sample autoforms doc, because I'm going to demonstrate the autoforms. And this is pretty cool, but it's not very, the wow factor is really not there, right? So I have this. I just showed you where I had gone through and I had created some text boxes with the form option here. But if I go to automatically create form fields, done. So that was pretty quick. And what happened was, okay, apparently the landscape people are here to weed my lawn or to spray stuff on it, because there's a big tractor outside my window. Easily distracted. So it put in all these forms, and with these forms, look at this. Over here on the panel, not only did it create the forms, it gave me little bookmarks and text boxes, and these are pre-populated. You got me there, David. That was good. Pre-populated with the names and of the boxes that it filled in. So references here, it found the adjacent word and added it. So really, really nice stuff here. So this can save you a ton of time. Of course, I can go in here and I can edit these, assuming if it got anything wrong, it would adjust. But what it's seeing here is, if I zoom in a little bit, it's seeing the length of this underline, and it's seeing the adjacent text height. That's how it's spacing it accordingly. So it works out really well. So forms are pretty simple. Again, it's an extreme only function, but filling them in is super easy too. I mean, do that.
How do you use the data that is entered into them?
Good question. How do you use the data that is you enter into them? Something good.
You say data, I say data.
I think it depends on the day.
Hmm.
Sometimes I say data. No,
Is there a
data.
distinction?
I always say data. If I have forms, right? So thanks for this, David. We've got a hypothetical now. Let's say we've got a form from 10 people for registration for a webinar. And in this webinar, I'm going to have them enter in their name and their job title and other stuff. So morning coffee reviews, spec number, blah, 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 blah. What is going on with this data? Does this appear in the markup list? Nope. Nothing. However, what I can do is once this is done, I can go in and I can export some data. And it will take out that document data into an FDF file, which should allow me to the middle form import data. There we go. So I found that FDF file, so I can export from one, bring it into another. It still doesn't show up in my markups list, but I have data that's reusable.
So you'd have to have something that reads an FDF file that's going to input all of that data that you have specific to fields or however you have it set up, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So overall, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Certainly handy. It makes for a much nicer fill out experience. If you've ever done like a job application or credit application or whatever else, having a form will make this easier.
So can you populate a submittal log or an RFI log was one question.
Yeah, you could. Well, a log. You could if you have that FDF file. So that would be handy if if you're doing these things all day long and you knew it was the same job, the same spec number. Maybe you just had to change some information. You can save that and then import it, and it will save you some clicks. There are some other customizations you can do with JavaScript, where it will, fill in the day. I mean, all the crazy things you can do with JavaScript. I'm not going to fake scenarios there, but you can do a lot with that too. As far as like a spreadsheet, though, I don't think that's going to work.
Already had a question, so I can see the ones on your screen in Bluebeam CAD. So yes, you can see forms in terms of already created in CAD, yes. But you need Extreme to create custom fields, right?
Right. So if you're in standard, you'll be able to see these. So you can open up this file and you can type things in here and you can interact with them. You just can't do, you can't resize things. So how come I can't resize things in this one? You can't go in and like
select it, or it's locked. Select the field on the left, maybe. No, the actual field, yeah, because we're not in the command.
Yeah, you can't do this in standard where I'm resizing. Side note, the fact that these are blue is a highlight function. So there's a highlight option here. You can toggle that on and off. The forms still work, but you don't see where they are.
There's another question. Is there an option to export to a CSV? So if you go to export, let's see, go to export. No, the other data. I guess that's always known, but from there, is there an option to select your export type? Oh,
yes. Look at that. Good question.
Another one from Danny. How do you do an autofill on those fields? So are you talking about like a drop down or autofill text? Because autofill text is things that you can set up in terms of words known, but you can create a drop down from here too. So Jason, there's a drop down feature. Oh, autofill text. I don't know.
You can't really autofill it unless you've done it before, right? And it's kind of going back to that template talk, right? If I have certain information, like I know I'm working on the same job, which has the same project number and same address and all that other stuff, I can pre-populate that in one form and then export that data that we just saw here, or I can export that to a CSV file or a FDF file, and then I can auto-populate that by importing it back in. But I can't, grab stuff from Word and drop it in unless I'm copying and pasting.
You can also have the drop-down selection, right? If you feel like you have most frequent jobs. So there's a
drop-down option right here. And I'm not very good with these. Are you?
Yeah. And what's the list? I've never used a list box. What's that?
Let's find out. I created a list box and it doesn't do anything.
Go to the settings, properties, settings. Yeah.
There's tooltip, list box.
No, down there it's an option. So there looks like there's an item down here you can add. So type in hello world or hello. I usually always say hello world. So maybe this is the autofill part. Hit add. List item, new ones. You can add, multiple selection. I like that. I've never used this. Add. So short items, comment selected value immediately. Oh, so these are the list items here. So if you go see how it says, so yeah. But those aren't automatically typing it. Those are just there.
They're there. It's not.
Well,
I bet
go back to the settings because there's this. No, yeah, properties. Sorry.
Oh.
It won't let you now go, but you're in it. Yeah, there you go. So it says short items here. Sort items here, or multiple selection, or
I want that.
Yeah. See, I like that. Click that. The comment, the commit selected value immediately. So.
Oh, maybe that's gonna take everything else out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's almost like a drop down, right? If you select it. Nope.
Yeah, it's kind of funky. Weird. We'll have to play with that one some more.
It's just a list. Yeah. Cool. Alrighty.
Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff that you can do with these. And yeah, you do have to go into the properties to mess with them. Normally, when I'm in here, I'm using these text boxes, or I'm using like checkboxes. So there is a checkbox.
Note that this assumes that the RFIs are entered in Procore directly. So Procore, I forget, does Studio Sessions lock forms? Do you remember? We'll go share my screen.
Good question. I don't know. Let's test it out. That's what we do here on Morning Coffee Review. If we don't know something, we're willing to admit, and we will test it out ourselves, because that's part of the beauty of this Bluebeam community. We're all sharing what we know and what we don't know.
So my question was, before we go into the drop-down list, talking about does forms work with Studio, because what I'm getting to, there was a Procore question. You can have integration between Studio sessions in Procore. So let's say someone submitted a form or a PDF that isn't form yet, and you want it to be a form, like with special drop-downs and all of that stuff, so people can work collaboratively. And then you can push it back into Procore, but you have to have Studio Prime for the integration into Procore. But back to that, let's see if sessions is limited to not creating a form, right? I'll just go in here. Doesn't matter which one I have open. Forms.
That's a busy file you got there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So you can't.
But if you had a brand new file that was a fillable form, and it was part of your sessions, would it be editable? I mean, fill-outable. How's that for a word?
I mean, so that comes back to the not speeding up Procore, right? Because the question was, can we save this out as, so because what takes time is going to Procore, right? So you go to Procore, you have all your stuff in Procore as your document management. Example, I can't talk and type at the same time. I'm gonna get off track, squirrel. Let me add this real quick. Desktop here. I saved it here, right?
Sure, you saved it somewhere. Example form, there you go.
As it loads.
Denied. So forms do not work in any form inside of review sessions. What about projects?
Yeah, projects, it checks it out like a PDF, but let me see. Oh yeah. So that, yeah, the time, what I was talking about was helping to expedite project management of document management, because then from Procore, you could just load it into session, change it to a form, mark it up, send it back, right? Versus having to do that by saving it down, opening it up in review, and then republishing it back into Procore, right? Saving people a step. Yes, forms do work in here. File share.
What's the value of using forms in a session? There really isn't, because normally multiple people wouldn't be entering in the same information into a form. It was more of a hypothetical, I suppose.
It was more of a help assist with Procore.
Yeah.
So if I check it out, I should be able to, boom,
there you go.
Because it's in view mode only when it's not checked out.
Correct. So good stuff there.
Now let's get back to here. Did I just freeze? No, I didn't. Okay.
File management, the never-ending challenge. You know, you can do some folder automations with Review Prime or Studio Prime. That helps with that.
I'm just gonna open up a template. We'll just do RFI too. And we'll just say request. We're gonna create a new field of some data here. It's not going to be a field, but I want to put it like a hierarchy of, I don't know, location. I could spell. And I'm just adding some text to, I don't know what theirs is, probably 8 or 10, but we'll address that later. Whatever their text is, because what we're really trying to get at is a drop down for different locations, like office locations, maybe. Is that something we might want? Who knows?
Yeah. Field office or, you know, whatever else.
Yeah. So from here, again, properties, you can do the right click, go to properties. I just go over and click my panel. And if you don't see it on the panel side, all you have to do is right click, show, and then you can go and say the forms here as well, or the properties. I was using the properties. I don't know why I said forms, but I probably want that open as well. And just like we were doing before, you have items like location, let's say Arizona, add, next one. What are we gonna say? We'll just do, I don't know.
Utah.
Okay. Utah, add. Okay, so we have a couple here and check spelling, and we have all those other ones as well. And you can resort these. So depending on their order that you have for them, right? You get to decide on what you want populated first. And just like Jason was saying earlier, you have the ability to go to forms, highlights, and you have a drop-down selection now. So there was a question about pre-populating text, I believe, earlier.
Mhm.
So this could be a pre-populated text selection, though, for your available options of having a drop-down list for people to just go through. So they don't have to worry about spelling or anything like that, or typing it in. They can just go through and do that as well. And I shut it off, so I need to highlight so I can edit. The reason why you can't edit these is because, again, we need to go to forms from here. You need to select it. That is now saying, oh, it's up for edit. And you can come back into here as well. Now, forms are also used. I never use this Thunderbolt part.
I was seeing when I was doing my homework for this, there are some options here, and this is way deep in the weeds that we're not going to get into. But you see right there, actually, there's an option there to calculate. So you can have formulas pre-populated in your form as well.
Yeah, cool. There's a sum. That's cool.
So you can do all sorts of very advanced things instead of just putting text in there. You can have it go through and do math, which would be kind of neat. So
does not print. Hidden, not printable.
Interesting. So while you're exploring that, let's see.
You're reading the questions
here. Yeah. Would a form be useful for capturing punch list type information? Might be more formal than just making comments on a PDF. Absolutely. Especially if you're doing like room by room stuff, or like a pass fail, or action needed type of thing. You could have those pre-populated with some of those default responses, right? So we looked at doing punch list stuff, I think, in an earlier episode, where we were pre-populating our symbology that we're bringing in from our tool set that said, leaky faucet or bad paint or whatever else. You could do that same thing here in a punch list thing, saying, electrical work necessary, or finish work necessary, or whatever. You can have all those different options that are applicable to your job, and have that pre-populated. Again, one of the beauties of this is that it can also do spell check. So you're always going to get, properly spelled, clean data. So it's not scribbled, it's not field scribbled. Yep. You'd be able to go through and get good information quickly. So it would work really well.
Be slick if you could link the RFI form to plan sheets. Well, there is an action. So there are actions, so you can add an action. But this one's saying trigger mouse up. So I'm guessing that's specific to this, like as you're scrolling, right?
Yeah.
You could add an action and go to somewhere. Yes, you can.
So it could link to a plan sheet.
Yep. Or a hyperlink, or open a document. What's this form? Oh, JavaScripting, fun stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this action stuff also comes with your stamps, right? So forms, even though everyone thinks of forms as modifying a PDF to make it easier, more legible, and more organized, that also plays into effect of forms comes into when you're creating custom stamps in terms of enterable field with your JavaScripting. Forms also plays, by the way, into creating your dashboards. That selectable dropdown I had in my dashboard was created by a button in Forms that had a JavaScript specifically set up to a layer. So when something was on a layer, when you click the button, it actually defaulted the layer off. In order to have the JavaScript, though, right, you have to have extreme as well as the form enterable fields, because you can always come into here. And when you get ready to create a custom stamp, these are from out of the box. You get this JavaScripting window that automatically, like those drop downs we've had before, like I just showed how to create, it allows you to select specific items in the stamp. So once it's placed, it says what that stamp is, right? So again, this is in some stamps from out of the box, but what it's behind the stamps themselves is the JavaScripting code that is allowing it to manipulate the fields in here, which are the form fields.
And that is all a different language that I don't understand. But that's the beauty of this stuff, is that you can access that code, and you could probably figure out certain things. So if you needed to change the word discipline, for example, that would be pretty easy to change here.
So, yeah, but you need to make sure that this correlates with your form distinction. Right. Yeah. So form distinctions are over here, and your JavaScript window is over here. So this distinction is pulling this information where they're at. So just be aware.
Yeah, that was just for you, David. I don't speak Java, so I'm here for you. We'll get our own little side community for people who don't understand JavaScript.
But what type of Java do you understand? Is coffee, right? Or
coffee and tea.
Java.
Yep. There we go. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Gotta love it.
But so this is just saying in terms of ones, right, or zeros. So there's a one selection plus or minus. So you have the ability to select or select not from. So yes or no. Values are what those integers are. These are the list of their groups specific to the area. And this is a list error message status that brings up the error window, because there's not something that's been modified. So it'll say this is what prompts your window for your list of your JavaScripting window. You can get really deep in the woods. I highly recommend just saving this out as, don't modify one from out of the box, and just trying to manipulate some of the data and see what you can do. Mm-hmm. That's what I did. And from there, you can kind of start Googling some of these phrases or what these are in here in terms of synapses for it, and you're well on your way.
Yeah, it's not an impossible language to learn, and there's a lot of good resources online for it, YouTube and Google and whatever else. But that rabbit hole goes deep because it can do a lot, and there's other functions inside of Revu besides forms that can rely on that JavaScript. So,
yep, it is definitely in language.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. Well, since we're in here and you just created that drop down, you want to show off the radio buttons? I did the checkbox. Yes. What are our other options for forms? So we've got the text box, the radio button, list box, drop down. We didn't do button, and we didn't do radio button.
Oops, I clicked both. It's just a selection button. And this is also what I use, by the way. Little hint, we don't cover it in my white paper, or we didn't cover it in the dashboards either. Where's this dashboard at?
That one, the ATG dashboard.
It's this one. This is also what I use in here for my action of selection. So there is a button here, by the way, allowing and enabling me to utilize it. That is then attached to my layers. So it's going to be turning this on and off for the button that I've selected. Because when you have a button, you have the ability to go through and also write a JavaScript layer for it, which none of these have. Oh, this one does. So just be aware of that as well. These are copied per page, by the way. So there's one of them per page because their one instance was created first. And then I copied this as my template down to each one. So the buttons got copied with it. But back to here. Close this out, go back to my recents. We'll go to example form. And so that is the button. Again, it can be used for multiple things. I'm in a session. We'll go file new, template, form. What else do we have? Text, radio, check. You did the check, right?
Yep.
We went over the list together. Oops, I'm mistaken. I meant button, not radio button.
Yeah. Let's do multiple radio buttons because I think don't you have to group them to get them to work right?
In terms of clicking.
Oh, okay, they do work.
Yeah.
So it doesn't let, once you have multiple, it doesn't let more than one have checkboxes. So if you had multiple checkboxes, you'd use checkboxes. Radio button gives you the one selection.
Yep, correct.
So how they behave is a little different.
Yep. And it knows when it's being placed onto a sheet with itself on the form. So you have the radio button, check, we did the list. The drop down, the button is what I used in terms of clickable. So it allowed me to click that drop down, and you can change the way this button looks, by the way. So from the button item, we can go through and change the appearance of it. So you can say it's not visible or hidden. Also, I think it was the label.
There's colors.
Yeah.
Label only. Behavior inverts. Yeah. If you missed the dashboard one, we did that June 8th.
I'm also doing a webinar on it. So it's going to be, it's going to be more of a not long open format, right? In terms of open, and you can ask questions. It'll just be me talking about how to create a dashboard, and that'll be on, where's my calendar? I think I'd had these things memorized. It's July 8th.
July 8th. So Thursday, upcoming webinar. Good to know.
Yeah, but there's always our YouTube, and I'm guessing you were going to get to that. So
I'll let you I was going to mention that too, that, you can go see our old dashboard morning coffee review from June 8th. But we have another question here about radio buttons. Let's say you have 4 different yes or no questions. How do you get them to allow you to multiple selection?
So you're saying these should only select between the two, not a third or fourth selection of radio buttons? So like
correct.
You have another one over here, but we want these two to be.
Yeah, your answer is kind of showing up in the forms panel at the same time.
Yep.
See how they're put in under there as groups? So if they're in their own group, if you've got 4 different yes or no questions, you're going to have 4 different groups. And each group will contain 2 radio buttons, one for yes and one for no. That will keep them from interacting with one another and allow that multiple selection.
But you have to make sure you create them in the same cadence of you selecting the item for it. So if you want things to be in that group, right, you need to select it for that group at the beginning. I don't know if you can move it. Let me see if I can go to properties and move the group. Oh, come on, what are you doing? Style choice. Oh, check by default. No, it's just an action. I can't.
Ooh, look at that. Stars?
I'm learning. This is new. I didn't know. Ooh, I like the star.
Yeah, that's cool. A little something different.
It just says choice 1 is the name. You can't switch the group unless I'm missing it.
How do you, okay, here's another question. How do you unselect it? So Chris's question, how do you make it so it's not filled?
Oh yeah, that was one of the settings here that says pre-selected.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to uncheck. You have to go to the properties. That was choice 3, wasn't it? Or choice 1. There you go. With that selected, go to properties.
Check by default or not checked by default. So it won't be checked, but then it is checked. So you can't uncheck it because it just switches between the both.
Can you? Yeah, you can't have an empty radio button unless you only have 1. Correct?
Well, there's that one that says check by default, so you cannot have it checked, right? But then once one's checked, I think you're in the game. Unless someone else you can knows that.
Apply that setting.
Apply that setting, yeah.
How do you establish it as a blank form then?
That's at the beginning. You can apply it, right? And that's what Chris, I believe, is saying right now. You just have to have the setting selected for those forms of those choice items that says checked by default. No, you just don't have it checked by default. But once you've engaged it, you can't unengage it.
Right.
Does that make sense? So just don't click in it.
Check it so it disappears. So yeah, it doesn't toggle on and off. If you need that toggle on and off, don't use a radio button, use a checkbox.
Yeah.
That's what the different behavior is between the two. Checkboxes don't care if you've got 20 or 30 on the page because they don't interact, or radio buttons need to be grouped so one can be on, one can be off.
I never mess with the check settings. Can you change the way that looks?
Look at that.
No way. I want a star.
Now note this. So this is part of something that shows up in the markups list, and this kind of goes along with the punch list question that we had before. This one will export a value for yes. So if you have checkboxes part of your form or other document, this will show up in the markups list too.
So yeah, and this is usually as, I'm guessing, when you export the value. Oh, see, you can even say you want that value to export, yes or no. A 0 and a 1, I'm guessing, right? Like a CSV
well, it's
file.
going to say yes in the markups list. It should, at least.
I meant like a CSV. Does it show up as a 0 or a 1, or does it say what it is? That'd be my question. Probably 0 or 1. Maybe it does say yes.
Yeah. Another question, but shouldn't your blank form that you send out have both be blank to start with? Yes.
Well, that was the thing here.
Check by default.
This radio button, right? They're not checked.
You want them blank, and then if you're sending it to somebody, you want them to make that choice and not have something default, because what if they don't make that conscious decision, right?
I remember, once you check it, you can't go backwards.
Right? So the question, here's a question from Chris. If I want 3 blank buttons, how do I do that?
You draw 3 blank buttons at the beginning. So from here, boom, boom, boom.
And you just don't check them.
Yep.
Once you check them, that's when they start talking to one another. So you got to be careful with that one. Very tricky. How do you test your form? Make a copy. Do a save as. So have your test form. Normally what I do.
Or trust review and know that it works, right?
Sure. When you've done it so often, you don't have to test yourself, right? But you always get you in trouble. Must be a way to reset the form. Yes, there is a way to reset the form. If you go up to Tools and go to Form, Reset.
Oh, there's all your circles gone. There we go. Solved it. And highlight and recircle. What about?
We're just holding that back from you, David. We're just migrate typewritten text. So what this will do is, if you have the typewriter tool and you have somebody put the typewriter on, that's what we were talking about before. If you didn't have a form, you just had those lines, you're going to use a text box or typewriter tool to fill in those single lines. And with that, with migrate, it will actually take that typewriter text and put it inside of your form later on.
No way. Okay. So that's what this is doing. That's cool.
Allegedly. I haven't tested it. You want to do that? Good. Maybe.
So what do I need to do? Make a markup?
Go to create a new file from template. Do the same RFI file, but don't use the form one. And use a typewriter to put some lines in some of those lines. Use typewriter, not text box.
Okay.
So W hotkey. I use typewriter for single line text. It's not as flexible, I don't think, but put it on like today's date and put it on.
Oh, okay. So this is the answer.
Correct.
Okay.
You can always move it later. That's so tricky. So put your name. Information requested. More coffee. Zero sleep. Yes. Michael didn't get much sleep last night, or zero sleep. So he's gonna be slamming his fancy energy drinks today. Besides coffee.
Those are like my later in the day drinks.
Later in the day.
By the way, DJ CJ loves energy drinks too.
But we've been told that sugar-free Red Bull is her love language, and I thought that was pretty funny. All right. Can you have the date auto-populate? That's a great rhyme. I want to notice the rhyme. Second of all, TMI. I think that's a JavaScript thing to make it auto-populate the date. It should be possible.
That is a dynamic fill. A dynamic text indicator. And the best way to do that is a stamp.
There you go.
So, yeah, when you go into stamps here, you have the dynamic when you select a text. Quick tangent, right? Oops, nope, I was placing it. I need to go to tools, stamps. And I think you can do it still in a text. I haven't tried it, but it automatically populates when you place a text box here.
Did it freeze up? Did you freeze up? He froze up. He's not blinking. If the person doesn't have
you'll have this populate. Hopefully it was a good hopefully it was a good face.
So you started making the text box when you froze up.
Okay, so text box, you have the ability when you're in a stamp text box and you have dynamic fill.
And that dynamic fill is only going to show up with a text box in a stamp.
I don't think you can do a dynamic. You can with a page, right? So what was that? The header and the footer, you can create those. I don't think you can create a dynamic one.
No, I've never seen that option in there.
Yeah, because at the indication of it like being used, right? Because the date, when you click it, it synchronizes the date feature for it.
Right.
When you're adding the stamp. But okay, so we're back to this. Okay, so I'm trying to create a form from these, right? So
now we can run our automatic thing because extreme. Ooh, skipped them. Okay.
Is that because I didn't have my form settings correct? Maybe. Well, it has them here.
It only found the empty lines. It didn't find the lines that were pre-populated. So now try that migrate thing. See if it will make a form out of that text. Found one. There you go.
But it just,
Oh, it didn't do it. Okay. So maybe you have to put a form text box behind it and then do it.
Is it only for the typewriter tool? Because it says markups. Oh, migrating. Oh, it doesn't say markups. I must miss eliminating the markups.
Interesting. So obviously this is a feature that we know about, but we've never tested it. And that's the beauty of Revu. There's so much hidden stuff in here, that so many rabbit holes.
Yeah, it didn't work.
So try making a form box behind that, and then move the typewritten text on top, or actually move your text on top of your form below for description. That would be just as easy.
Can I send that to the back? No, I can't. So let's see.
Wasn't that a question in the other episode where the draw order function?
Yeah, I use a draw order in the dashboards a lot, but it doesn't matter in there even with that. So alrighty, we have 10 minutes left. I think we've pretty much done it for forms, unless anybody has any questions pertaining to forms or anything related to Bluebeam Revu as a whole. Give it a couple seconds here.
Any questions over there on YouTube land? So we talked about automatic form creation. We did the text box. We did all of the different options inside of Revu. Okay, good question. And both of these questions are related. So Chris asks, can you add values?
So we can add calculated values, yes.
Right.
And that was going through and saying whatever option you want for it. And then in the properties of whatever it is down here. Not in this one, but excuse me.
Question.
This one doesn't have the calculated options, but I think text does. I know for a fact it does. Or I think we did the calculated value was for like, is it the button is showing up for?
No, that was the list. I think it was the list box.
Okay. No, I think it was the.
So yeah, we're looking for the one that allows you the calculated values. And then what we want to do is add the numbers together to get a total. And then we're going to tie in David's question with that and output it to a CSV file. So good challenge we got here.
Yeah, it is text. So it is the text one that has the calculated value.
So how would you add the numbers together? How would you enter in information?
Calculated field, sum, product, average. You're going to select what one you want to calculate from. Like, I don't know. We'll just do that one. So calculated field for the average of the following list item fields. That's what this value is going to give you. Calculated for whatever's in those inputted values, which we have nothing inputted, right? So it's the average of field 1 and field 2. Does that make sense? Or the product or minimum, maximum, sum.
Okay.
I've never run this validation field. I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure. Oh, to allow you to enter a field. So if you were putting in, it wouldn't allow you to do negatives, or it wouldn't allow you to do anything over 100 or whatever else.
Okay.
Validation script. Ooh. There goes Michael showing off that scary language again. All right. So at this point, let's export this to a CSV. Now this, you're not going to get much because the Michael and the Jason, the zero sleep, those are not inside of a form. So those won't export. When you go to export data, I'm going to change that to a CSV and not an FDF. So in here, we should have like a checkbox, and there should be like a 0. See what we get. Choice 2 and a 0.
Yep.
So there was an option in there to rename things. And I think there was a question that came up too. Back to Revu, go to your forms panel. Can you rename choice 2 or choice 1? Can that property be changed? Look at that. So yes, you can change the name of it. There it is. So you could have that align with what it is on the page, right? So if you have a checkbox next to the word yes, and you have a checkbox next to the word no, you can actually change the value of the checkbox itself, the forms panel, to match.
I learned a lot today.
So did I. It's always fun playing with the software. I think it's way more fun for all of us to play together than just me playing on my own when it comes to figuring out forms, because I might use it differently than you're going to use it, and David's going to use it differently than Chris. So being able to collaborate like this in the community is what makes Morning Coffee Review so great. So before I forget to say it, thank you for being a part of this, because I really enjoy this. All right. Another question from David. Would it work then if you collected, say, 10 forms from different people or 10 RFIs to combine them and then export the combined data?
How does Revu see combined data though in forms? That'd be the question, right? Because you can merge data.
Mm-hmm.
So when you merge the data, so PDF files to export data from. So is this adding all of those files together?
There you go. That would be the trick then. You would take all of the 10 RFIs from 10 different people and then export that data. But what format would that data be?
Well, let's see if we can select it. Let's go to desktop.
Yes, it would be tedious, but I think we're on the right track here, David.
Well, it wouldn't be as tedious because they're going to be, well, I guess because you have to collect it from people, right? They send you this PDF, right? So we'll say MCR1. So they're sending you back the filled out form, and you're coming into here and saying, great, thank you for your time. Let me merge data, and you're grabbing
all 10 of those files.
Yeah, wherever they live. And yep.
Export to CSV.
And you can only do CSV and XML.
So yeah, that won't write back to Bluebeam. That's just pulling the data from those forms, putting it all together, and it will be compiled. So if you are sending the same exact form, remember, it's the form that you would want to send out, you'd want to make logical names. So group 1, you would rename that to whatever you want that choice to be. That text 7, you would rename that to whatever you wanted that to be. That way, when it does show up as a CSV file, it pulls in that value. It gives you the proper column header.
Data. Yeah.
Data.
Because you can even change this group 1 here. It was allowing you to do that, right? You can rename the grouping for it. And that correlates to here. Wow, you're super small. That correlates to here, right? Some features may be lost because of workbook, whatever. Whenever you see something, please do read things. Software indicates things to you for a reason. Don't just click out like I do. But from here, you have the group, which is this group here. And then again, the choice, which is this selection here, right? The calculated value is 0 because I said take the sum of RF or the average of RFI and another field. I forget which other one I selected, and there was nothing. So it gave us a value of 0. And that was one question was, hey, can I take one field by another field and get some value for it? You totally can. So if someone's putting, I don't know, weight by something, and you want to know the weight divisible by something else or the sum of something else, you can get a total here as well. And then this is the name of the file.
Pretty cool. So then you would rename those files. So, RFI number 12 / David, RFI / 12, and have everybody's name associated accordingly. So good stuff there. And that brings us to 9:30 Central Time or 7:30 Arizona time where Michael is.
Yes.
So that brings us to our conclusion of this week's episode of Morning Coffee Review. Thank you all for being here. We will see you next week, which would be June 29th. where we're going to talk about something. We'll talk about what we're going to talk about. You'll see the preview on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we'll go from there. Any parting thoughts from you, Michael?
No, we didn't do our giveaway, so we will have to do it next week.
There you go. We're doing a giveaway next week. So,
but you have to be 15 minutes early.
Yeah, show up before we start, before we kick off. So, sorry, YouTube folks. Next time.
Next time. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining in. And again, thank you all. This is all about you, the community. We had a lot of fun today. We both learned something new, Jason and myself. We're always here to test things out. So don't worry or feel worried. You can always come in and try to stump us. So we're here.
It's always fun for us too. So
thanks, everyone. Have a good one.